And at the end of the day, we will be sending out a link to this as well as a link to our the slide deck that we're doing here. Thanks for joining in with us this early this morning. Dr. Allison Smithwick and I are happy to be here, and we're going to go through some things as you think about wrapping your brain around returning to school with TeKSbank Classroom. And if you will be patient with us, I am presenting off of Canvas for the first time on Zoom. So Dr. Smithwick has done a great job helping me do some tech problem solving, but I'm still getting used to it a little bit. We wanted to start off and first off, just introduce our team. So this is the TeKSbank Classroom team, and we are literally the TeKSbank Classroom team. So anytime you reach out or fill out a help ticket or call with an issue or an enhancement suggestion, you are reaching out to us. It's not anybody up at the state level. We are here and we are here to provide you this service. So Courtney Stevens is our assistant director here at Region 10, and my name is Christopher Gray, and I'm the program coordinator, and I am thrilled to have just jumped on the team July 1st. So this is actually my first TeKSbank training that I've got to do. So really just dived in and getting to enjoy and appreciate the system. So Dr. Smithwick is also here, and she's going to jump in and kind of buff up my wording when needed, just with some of that deeper understanding of it. But obviously, everyone here is a returning user as well. So we would love to hear your thoughts. Dr. Smithwick's going to be watching the chat and chiming in with your input and advice. But we're a very small group. So if you want to come off mute and just chime in as well and share that boots on the ground input, we'd appreciate that. Bree Manuel is also our other consultant here. And then Joshua Dunn is also on the team. So anytime you reach out, you'll be reaching out to one of the five of us. So here's what we're going to do. We have kind of a jam-packed day in a very short hour. But this is a brief overview of what our hour is going to look like. So we're going to start with some technical side, really digging into what do you need to do as you are setting up the year, because I know at the end of the year, maybe TeKSbank Classroom wasn't at the forefront of your mind as you were wrapping up the school year, excited about summer. So we'll look at a few housekeeping things there. Then we're going to dig into formative assessment and what is that and how does it fit into a balanced assessment design. And then we're going to dig into designing some stronger checks. And so you already know how to make checks in TeKSbank Classroom and how to use that as a formative assessment tool, but how can we even make those checks stronger to drive your instruction further? Then Dr. Smith is going to step in and go over some reading of the data and get a little bit more into the technical piece of what that data looks like and what actions we can take. And then we're going to move into planning out responses to students, planning out our response to students' responses. Something else we're really going to be pushing this year is kind of practicing what we preach. And so we are going to wrap the day up with an exit ticket, and we would love your feedback on this session just so that that can help us drive future sessions and really tune us into what support is needed for you at the district and campus level. So we're going to start off now. If you could scan in this um, QR code. And so we can see we've done this session once on Monday.
Yeah.
Monday feels like a long time ago. So we've done this session once, but we'd love to hear how you use TeKSbank Classroom right now. So on Monday, we got some results of how TeKSbank Classroom is using clearly assigning to students, sharing resources, and planning. That reteach or extension piece is primarily how it's been used now. But I want to give you a few seconds. Tell us how you use it when you're in the classroom and planning for instruction. So if you can scan that QR code and then do a vote. I hope it's working. I was focused on Canva tools. I failed to check that poll.
it won't let you respond twice.
Okay. Well, I'm hearing that that is not letting you respond. So sorry about that. We need to close that poll. If you want to drop it in the chat, just let us know how you use TeacsBank Classroom. And and if you're just joining in and haven't started using it, that's fine as well. This was a returning user, but yeah, we welcome everybody at all levels of this. All right, well, we will go ahead and continue on. Um, so seeing obviously from last time, just kind of the majority of how users have used that. So we'll dive into a few more of these pieces today. So the first thing we want to talk about is prepping for next school year. I know the end of the year, to say that it's hectic might be putting it a little mildly. So I know there's a lot going on and a lot of turning pieces. So we did just want to make sure that your program, that the TeacsBank program for you was up and running for this school year. So the first thing that we've included here is a GIF, and it kind of moves a little fast. Um, and I thought I could pause it, and I could not. But basically, what we're going to ask you, give you a few seconds to do is to go ahead and pull up that TeacsBank Classroom app in Campfire and going in and just making sure all of your classrooms are archived. So what this gift shows you is shows you how to select that. And then once you're inside of that course, going into settings and then selecting archive class. And that'll just make sure that all of your previous year's data is archived and ready for you to connect a new classroom. So like I said, I know that GIF is kind of moving a little bit fast, but really what we wanted to do was set up a tool for you once you do get this published slide deck of what you can take back and review. So if needed, you do have that resource there just to kind of walk you through how to archive last year's data. And now we're going to get into the formative assessment piece. So if you are a returning user, this is probably going to be more of a recap or a review for you on TeacsBank and our approach to a balanced assessment framework. So we really want to view TeacsBank Classroom as what drives the daily formative assessment in the classroom and using that to power your instruction based off of student feedback and student performance on questions. So just a few little naming conventions here. TeacsBank is that huge bank of questions, 85,000 items plus. We put that plus on there because we don't want to update that daily as new items are updated. But the team is constantly putting in not only new items, but also new courses as we discover new needs present in our districts. So TeacsBank is that larger item that we're pulling out of, and you can pull those items into your DMS for summative assessments results, or you can put them into your LMS as that TeacsBank Classroom. And that's really what we're covering here. And also in our next session, if you're able to dial into that when that's covering for new users. But what it does is that is the piece that provides that immediate feedback on items that are aligned to our TEKS. Um, and we'll get into this, but like I said, as you are well aware, if you're a returning user, not only items aligned to TEKS, but items aligned to the depth of knowledge of those TEKS at all levels. So giving an entry point to that, but also seeing how our students progressing and performing on those items. So formative assessment is a process. It is something that we're doing in the classroom. We need to, oh, sorry. I thought that was we thought that was animated. We do need to gather that evidence and what students are doing and how they're performing on standards. And then we need to take some time to interpret the evidence. Once we have that and we're able to analyze what's going on here, What is the reason for this performance on the item? Then we need to adjust that teaching and learning. And I love this quote at the bottom of the page. Would we say formative assessment? It's only formative if our results are going to drive what happens next. And a lot of this might sound like a review for you if you're familiar with the four essential questions in a PLC. And we really have designed TeaksBank to fit in perfectly into that TeaksBank process. We're going to get into these individual components much more later on in our presentation. But that first piece is that planning. What do we want students to learn? What are we wanting to see how what do we want students to learn and what is the objective of that assessment? Then we're going to move into that building piece. How will we know if they've learned it? And we're going to drill down later on into some verbiage of the TEKS and understanding the rigor of that and really knowing how are we going to know how they learned it? And that's going to influence how we build our checks. And then moving into that last piece of analyzing, what are we going to do? If students are, if that performance shows that there might be some unfinished learning, what moves are we going to make? And if everybody's acing it, and we still have time in that unit of study, what is the next moves that we're going to do? Which takes us to our next page, kind of leading in with that. A formative assessment is only formative if it influences your next move. So if students struggle on it, we're going to reteach, model, maybe doing an explicit model with some real super explicit think alouds to show students what good thinking looks like as they're working through there. Or we might need to clarify. There might just be a misconception there that we have to go in and kind of buff up. Results might be mixed, showing that students, well, we don't necessarily um, need to reteach to everyone, but we might need to check in with smaller groups of students and see where did the misunderstanding happen and where is that learning that we need to shore up. And obviously, in a perfect world, students might be ready, especially our gifted and talented students or our high achieving students. They might be ready to move on and start doing that extension piece, application piece, or just move forward in the study. So in this, we've got a screenshot here. In the screenshot that we've shared here, which one of these standards do you think would show that students need some reteaching, modeling, or clarifying? Where is it that there might be some unfinished learning? So we see we've got student one and student two across. So which one of these standards might need to say, oh, we got to go back and shore up this learning? If you could drop it in the chat. Where are we seeing that there's some unfinished learning that students need some clarification around? So this first one, the first item would be one. We've got lower performance there. Obviously, there might be unfinished learning in a previous grade level. Some the learning might have broken down in this grade level, but yet we would need to go through and do a whole class reteach on that. There's some serious misunderstanding happening there. Something happened in that tier one instruction that needs to be rectified. However, we can see once we get over to the sixth and seventh standard that this is more, it's that mixed result. We had a few reds, a few do need that reteach, and some yellows, maybe just some students who need that extra push, some extra time on this. But then we've got students who are performing in the greens, they're ready to move onward. So this is where you could kind of use TeKSbank Classroom to form small groups, even to design independent learning experiences or teach-based centers in the classroom. And then we've got our extend piece. We really don't need to do any more tier one instruction here. These students are ready to do more of an application piece, something higher in depth of knowledge or in blooms. They're really ready to move forward with this learning. So using our TeKSbank Classroom dashboard to kind of design our next moves and truly make sure that our assessment remains formative since it's powering our instruction. We're gonna go do things a few skips through here. And our next session that we're gonna get through is designing stronger checks. So you may already be using TeakSbank Classroom since this is a returning user section. And you may be very adept at building those classroom experiences, building out those formative assessments. So now what we want to talk about is, yes, you're doing that. How could we even make that stronger? So before you even get into the bank of items, we need to go in with a clear instructional decision. 85,000 items plus. There is a lot to dig through. So really having that super clear picture of what you need is really going to make sure that your check is just the best that it can be. So first off, we need to think about, what do I need to know? What is that specific understanding or skill that you're needing to check in the TEKS and that students are needing to show that they understand? Then what is that evidence? What should students be able to do? What is the verb of that TEKS? Are we identifying? Are we interpreting, comparing, explaining, or applying? So knowing that is really going to drive what kind of item and experience we design. Thinking through, what are some misconceptions? Harder to do maybe at the beginning of the year, but really kind of thinking through, you know your class better than anybody. What might be the misconception or error pattern with this, and what support might students need in this formative check? And then once again, as we've been saying, what am I going to do next? Am I going to go back and do a reteach and clarify that? Am I going to use this information to group my students in groups? Or am I ready to go and start extending this for further enrichment? So as we move forward, those tasks that we can select are going to reveal different thinking and really drilling down and thinking about, what is the TEKS asking me to do? Sometimes the TEKS is going to ask you to have students identify something and have that recognition or recall. Sometimes we want to order these verbs in hierarchy and say, well, we really just need to focus at these more extreme levels to get our students thinking, but sometimes we do have that in the TEKS that students need to perform these other verbs. So thinking through, here's a social studies example, identifying differences among different regions of the United States. Uh, a lower rigor verb, but something that we still need to make sure that students are able to do. Sometimes students might be interpreting, so understanding a source, a graph, or a model. And here is a math example of a TEK, so something that I would not be able to do, but interpreting the meaning of values of A and B in exponential functions. So making sure, are we designing checks that align to that and have students interpreting that? Students might be analyzing, so examining relationships or patterns. And so here's one about analyzing beneficial and harmful influences of human activity on groundwater, or having students explain. So seeing what is their reasoning and really drilling down what are maybe some misconception they're having. And so here's one: explaining purposes of rhetorical devices such as understatement and overstatement. We peppered in a language arts one for me. So that task is, oh, so sorry. And I completely messed everything up. But that task is going to determine the evidence that you need to pull in and get your students to show. In those 85,000 items, we've got a lot of really fancy items that look great and are super interactive, but we really don't want to just focus and pick an item because it looks good. We need to make sure that we are choosing the right item for the evidence that we need. So if we're doing a thing like recognizing if that's the rigor of the verb in the ask, we would maybe select some selected responses, inline choices, or multi-select, because all we're trying to see here is, can students identify or distinguish? The next would be organizing. So showing the evidence of relationships. So you might be doing a drag and drop, a match table grid, or hot text. Because here what you're trying to do is see, can students classify, sequence, or connect? You might also be needing students to represent. So for that, you might do a hotspot, a text entry, or an equation editor item. or having students explain and show evidence of their reasoning. So this is a time when you might do a constructed response and actually have them go in there and formulate some writing. So big picture here, make sure that you're not picking an item just because it looks good and it's super interactive. Yeah, those items are there and they're great, but we need to make sure that the items that we're picking are aligned to what evidence we need. And then after you've built that and you've identified what evidence you need and you've made sure that you've got the item that you need that fits that ask, we do need to do one last check. So make sure, is this really aligned to the learning target? Are students actually doing the thinking and performing the work that you need to see in order to say that, yes, they've mastered this TEKS, or in order to say they need some more support? They're not responding to that first pass round. We need to shore up that thinking. Will the responses reveal understandings or misunderstandings? And once again, it is TeKSbank Classroom. So is this going to provide you with a specific result of what you can do on your next instructional response? So just checking that fit one last time before you roll that out to your class. So now I'm going to go ahead and pause here for just a second. And so bear with us. We're going to I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Smithwick, and she is going to share her screens and take us into the next piece.
Neat. No. Okay, I hope we are good with sound, and it looks like we are sharing the correct screen. So I am going to jump into the application and kind of look at some of the things that Chris talked about and how to put them into play inside the application. So I'm going to just give you a very brief overview of what we're looking at here in case you haven't seen it in a while. When I first log in, I can see the dashboard, my classrooms. Leave that there. No, but I can. Thank you. Sorry, Chris is providing some support that's much needed. So we are looking at my classrooms that I have rostered and brought into TeKSbank Classroom. And we started the presentation with archiving. So if this was my last year's classes, and you can see that it is based on the dates that I've created, I could go in and archive. And the reason that we started with that was so that you don't mix up your data by bringing in new rosters for this class, this year's classes, and confusing data with last year. So taking that time to go in and archive, and I'm going to model that one more time. So I'm going into Crandall. Crandall was a demo class, and then over here to settings, and then to hit archive. And I'm not going to do it just because I don't want to archive my demo stuff, but it's as simple as that, and you'll go through each roster. And that will remove from the top of your dashboard, and then you'll go in and add your new classes for this year. Okay, show me what I'm supposed to talk about next. Oh, wait, I'm there. Hold on. It's okay. I'm almost there. Okay. Thank you for waiting on me as I toggle back and forth. I want to, before I skip out of the live demo, also talk about the data screens, and then I'm going to go back to the slideshow. So I'm a little clunky here. All right, sorry about that. All right, I'm going to go into my SLD classes. I know I've got some data there. And by clicking on arrays, this is an assignment or an activity that we've had someone participate in. So here's the data screen that you saw Chris talking about earlier and looking at patterns and trends. This is a different group and a different assessment, so we're looking at some different results. But you're able to do exactly what Chris said by looking at the patterns, looking at the red, yellow, green, and making some decisions about what comes next. The other thing I can show you here live in the program is that each of these buttons can be clicked on for more information. And so I just wanted you to be able to see right now it's anonymized, and in most of our screenshots, you don't see names, but I can reveal names and take a look because clearly that's important when I'm doing my planning. And then clicking into each item also can look at student results. So as he's talking about what to do with the data, I just wanted you to be able to see what it looks like in the program and how you can analyze student data at the whole class level, the whole assignment level, and then also at the individual level. All right, thank you for letting me jump that way. Now I'm going to go back to the slideshow, make sure it's sharing properly. You see that? Okay. All right, so this is, let me go big here, apologize. This is the feedback screen. So we looked at what the teachers see after you've administered that very carefully designed assessment. The teachers got that red, yellow, and green layout, and they're looking at what do I want to do with this information? What are my next steps? Well, equally as important is what the kids see in terms of feedback. So this is one of our favorite things about TEKSbank Classroom is that it gives kids immediate feedback. As soon as they engage with the activity and press submit, they get a screen like this. And in this case, the settings are to show the student their overall result, remind them of the question they answered, and then to tell them how they scored. And so this is really important in terms of letting the kid know, I just did these 4 questions. I was really strong in 1 and 2. I can expect my teacher is going to circle back with me in 3 and 4. And so whether it's small group or whole group reteach, this feedback screen really helps students understand next steps. All right, going on to the next. And this screen is really just showing blocking out that percentage. And so in this case, it was 43. You can turn that off in the settings, but also an opportunity to talk with kids about their performance on individual items rather than their overall percentage score. It's a unique opportunity that you have with TEKSbank Classroom. All right. All right, so the point on this slide is that one item can reveal more than right or wrong. And again, I showed you how you can click into some of those individual scores when we're live in the application. For this screenshot, though, we're going to talk about what does performance reveal about the task. Oh, yes. What thinking did this item require? And so I'm looking in this case at item number 2. It looks like most of the kids did very well, and I have one student that missed it. And so this is my time to think about what was this item, and I can click on it to review it or refresh my memory on what it was. What kind of thinking did it require? And what is my response going to be? Okay, based on how they selected their choices or produced a piece of writing. And then also to stop and think about what's the possible meaning of this data? What misunderstanding or misconception is showing up here? And perhaps not on number 2, as in that static screen, but looking again at 6 and 7, the performance was a lot weaker. And so this is an opportunity to talk about misconceptions and misunderstandings. This screen has, yeah, the kids are anonymized on this. And so again, it is a chance to kind of do that class data talk, put it up on the screen and have the kids tell you what did they think was the correct answer and why, or why were they confused? What was their misconception? All right. This screen in TeachSpace Classroom shows results by standard. And so we call it the standards mastery screen. And looking here, I can see the overall number of times that a standard was assessed with this particular group. So my first little box here, the standard looks like maybe it's an earth science one. I think that's what ES stands for. And it was assessed 39 times in total with this group. And this reads from right to left. So the first performance was kind of in the yellow zone, as was the second. But by the third time I've assessed it and hopefully done some reteaching or some small grouping, my performance overall with the class in this standard is improving. And so that's what we're seeing here. In this case, the third box, again, an earth science standard, it's been assessed a total of 64 times. The first few times it was assessed, performance was not very good. And then we kind of went up and up again, and then perhaps dropped back down. And that usually makes sense to the classroom teacher in terms of what's been going on in the classroom instructionally and what we've been doing in terms of addressing misunderstandings or doing some reteaching and such. So that's our standards mastery screen, and it gives us the chance to see that larger pattern. Oh, sorry. So there were animations here. I'm terrible at that. There's all my talking points. All right. So we want to use the standard data to locate the need and then use the item as evidence to understand it. So again, it's the big picture versus drilling down to one particular item for information about your kid's performance. All right. Manual scoring, I can drop into the application in a moment I think we're good on time, and show you a little bit more about this for manual scoring. In all of those screens that we're showing you with the red, yellow, and green, the program is scoring the student response automatically. It's giving the feedback to the teacher immediately. But there are times where the teacher wants to do the scoring. And so we do have that manual scoring option. And in this case, the teacher can go in and give 2 points, 1 point, or 0 point based on a rubric they've created or a rubric that's provided in the application. And they would apply that consistently as they're going through each student's open-ended or manual scored response. They want to be really consistent in the way that they are scoring and giving feedback. So let me hop out of this screen, forgive me the clunkiness here, and show you what that looks like live in the program to do some manual scoring. See if I can quickly find an item that has that. Okay. All right, here it is. All right, so in this case, teacher can drop into the student response. I don't know if I didn't point it out as I was clicking, but I went to a gray box that had not been scored yet, clicked into it, it opened up the item, and then I can look at the key, and then I can also look at how the student responded, and then input the score here. In this case, I've already closed out this assignment. I don't know that it's going to let me. Yeah, it says scores cannot be edited. So I can't actually type it in, but this is the screen in which you would determine, did the kids get 2 points, 1 point, or 0 point? And then that will feed your data screen. So it does give a little flexibility. Also, it allows you to go back and rescore if you need to do some level setting there with kids, or you've had a conversation and they truly understood it but misclicked. So you have a little bit of freedom there, and that's what we call our manual scoring piece. All right, I'm gonna go back to my slideshow. All right, so this slide is really just saying that because we're able to do that, we are able to complete the evidence, the picture of evidence. And so we can determine whether the vocabulary or the directions or the stimulus was the barrier for success there, or if it was the particular kind of task. Or was it truly a content problem? Um, the result identifies where to look. The evidence underneath it helps explain why. So there's your overall point for all of those words I just used. And does the same issue appear across other items? So again, in TEKSbank Classroom, you're seeing those red, yellow, green patterns, and we're looking vertically and we're also looking horizontally for those patterns. And so we can see if those same issues are appearing across other items in our checks. All right, this says let's go live, and we already did. All right. Chris, do you want me to continue with planning the response, or do you want to jump back in here? Okay, yeah, okay. All right. Sorry, I'm moving my Zoom controls so I can see everything here. It's not letting, there we go. All right, let me click through my animations first so that I don't repeat myself. All right, so in this case, we're kind of looking at our instructional plans to address a learning gap. What's missing between the result and the response in terms of what did the data tell me? The kids are understanding or not, and then what am I going to do? Well, how am I going to respond and address that instructionally? So instead of saying the standard was low, we can, or something as general as they just need more practice here. We can be more specific, address the learning gap specifically. And if we think back into going into our PLC meetings and having these conversations where often we're looking at this data, perhaps everyone around the table has got their data up on their screen, they're seeing some similar things. We'll really drill down to what is the learning gap. It's not just that we're going to provide more practice opportunities. We're going to talk about what specifically was misunderstood. This is really valuable PLC conversation, right? Because I can say what I saw with my kids' results, Chris can say what he saw with his kids' results. Where was the thinking breaking down? And especially in some of our items, if you've chosen an item type that has multiple steps, sometimes we can see the kids get partial credit because the first part they did fine. The second part, something broke down. And so we can really talk about that with our PLC group. We could talk about it with our kids. What was happening in the thinking there? And what misconception appeared. So I use that word a lot because we know that happens with kids. They think they understand it. And so they've got a misconception that's interfering with their performance. Perhaps we change the language in our PLC to students can do something, but are struggling to do this part, which is a much more proactive conversation to have with your group of teachers who are planning together, right? Not just, oh, let's give them some more practice opportunities, but to say, you know, they really can do this piece of the standard, but we're seeing they're struggling to do this part. Gives you the opportunity to be a lot more specific. When the learning gap is vague, the instructional response will be too broad. All right. Evidence can change the next move. Again, I'm watching for my animations because I'm so bad at that. Okay. What pattern do we see when we are analyzing that data? What exactly was misunderstood? What's the smallest response that fits? And truly what that means is this really a chance to go back and reteach the whole group, or do I just need to target a few concepts with a few kids? I'm going to pull them back to my teacher table, or I'm going to pull them into after school tutoring, or I'm going to meet with one student and have a one-on-one. So I really want to be as small and specific as I can rather than giving just a broad, quick response. And then do a follow-up check. We're choosing another item type perhaps after that intervention has occurred, and what evidence is going to show that it worked this time. So lots of good questions and things to think about as you're doing that planning, those conversations with your PLCs, and your item selection and your formative assessment checks. Instructional action should be specific enough to try, observe, and adjust. All right, I think I mentioned class data talks, and so these slides really are just an opportunity or an example of how you might do a class data talk. If we want to pull up onto our whiteboard one particular item that most kids struggled with, or I'm at my teacher table and I'm putting it on my iPad because this particular group sitting with me struggled with. In this case, A, 14% chose it, B, 26% chose it, C, 51, and D, 9%. And again, TeKSbank Classroom is going to show you those results. And so let's talk about the item with the kids. And so we can really isolate the item, their performance on it, and have that data discussion with the kids. I talked about doing that with your PLC, and then also it's important to hear straight from the kids. Why did you choose that answer? Why did so many of you select C? And then why were so many of you drawn to B, and so on. I think the next one is a math example. Yep. All right, so here's another example of pulling one item up for the kids and talking about how everybody responded, which I love this because it makes the kid feel like they were not alone in their struggle, right? They can see how many of their classmates were tempted by the same distractors, and gives the teacher the opportunity to hear straight from them, why did I choose that answer? What misconception did I have? What was this item asking us to do? What made that common response so tempting for you to choose? And a lot of times we end up talking about test writers, right? And the distractors they provide perhaps to trick you, or why it's easy to fall for these wrong answers. And sometimes kids like to dig into, oh, they wrote that as a distractor because a lot of kids think this. So those are always good conversations to have. What evidence or strategy changes the answer? I taught GT for many years, and so these were really meaty discussions where Chris would say, this is how I tackled it, and I would say, this is how I tackled it, and we may have two different strategies and get to the same response. Or we have two different strategies and got to two very different places. And so those are great conversations as well. Again, the class data talk turns the shared error into that shared learning opportunity. All right. So I think that wraps up all of our talking points in terms of using TeKSbank Classroom for formative assessment. We looked at the screenshots with an overview of what some of our items look like and why you would select certain items. We looked at what the data looks like in terms of the red, yellow, green, and we even talked about how might we drill into that at the student level. And we did it all very quickly. So we always try to put resources at the end of our slide decks, and I'm just going to click through quickly to show you what we've got here for you to return to later. We do have a YouTube library. It's in its earliest stages. Not a ton of content there yet, but we're pretty fired up about getting that built out. We'll put our webinars there, and we have a lot of how-to videos. In some cases, those how-to videos have the voice that say, first click here, then click here, and so on. And so that's the goal, is that you could go into YouTube and watch and be refreshed either on the concepts we talked about in a webinar or see steps to complete something. We have a fantastic technical support team. If you've ever called this number before, the Data Solutions support number, you get Patrick or Jennifer generally, and they are fantastic in terms of supporting you with some technical difficulties. And if they don't know the answer specifically, they're going to forward to one of us. So as Chris said, a lot of your feedback, a lot of your calls will come directly to us, and we can walk through things with you. But that Data Solutions email, send us, describe what's happening, call us and ask, how do I get from here to there? And we will walk you through those things. One thing that's mentioned on this side is registration issues, and that refers to the initial creating of an account in TeKSbank Classroom, which could be a step that you need to do with a lot of your new teachers this year. So I've got some support documentation, well, all of us do, and we can send you some screenshots on how to get people registered, or give us a call and we can walk you through that as well. If you ever get an error message, which is happening less and less, we're proud to say, but we can help get through some of that. All right, Chris, was there anything else that you wanted to include before we wrap up? Okay, he says no. All right, so now we're finally to our exit ticket. And so we hope that at any point, if you don't have time now, to scan and to give us some feedback, whether you watch us live or recorded, we want to know a little bit about what you were thinking as we were presenting. Was it too fast, too slow, too much content, not the right content? All of those things we need to know from you. And because webinars are definitely one way, we're talking at you the whole time. This is your chance to kind of give us that feedback and let us know what to change or improve. And again, our contact information is there. So you can give us a phone call, you can shoot us an email. And in fact, that's an even different email address. Either one works to get to us. Go to teksbank.com. We've got some supporting information there, as well as all of our links to our personal email addresses. So we love to hear from you. That is the best part of our job, is interacting with teachers and people at the district level. So please don't hesitate to give us feedback. We really want it. All right, I think that is it for today. We appreciate your attendance or your attention watching the recording, and reach out to us. We're here for you when you need us. Recording.